On this Friday night, taxpayers on the hook for the former Governor-General's pension. How much Canadians will have to pay as the Prime Minister gets picked apart for handpicking Julie Payette.
Obviously, he made a big mistake.
The first official phone call between Justin and Joe.
They get along well.
Protecting a friendship and Canada's interests. Anger in Alberta. The province's turn to coal mining unearths an uproar. And a game changer in baseball.
They just was not ready for a black man to break that record.
Remembering home run king and Hall of Famer Hank Aaron.
Global National with Donna Friesen. Reporting tonight, Robin Gill.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. The Prime Minister is facing fallout tonight from the resignation of Governor-General Julie Payette. Payette was accused of creating a toxic work environment, and it resulted in an independent review that came to a scathing conclusion. Justin Trudeau handpicked the former astronaut for the job in 2017. He's not expressing regret for his decision and insists there was a proper vetting process. But as David Akin explains, the Governor-General's resignation is once again raising questions about Canada's connections to the Crown.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau offered no apologies for how Payette was picked.
Obviously, the vetting process that was in place was followed.
And he offered no details about how or when Payette's successor will be named.
As we move forward, we will reflect carefully on the way to best select a successor to the Governor-General.
But the opposition says the Payette controversy should be laid solely at the feet of the Prime Minister.
It comes down to Justin Trudeau, who was more interested in a flashy announcement of a Governor-General rather than doing the work of making sure it was the right selection.
Obviously, he made a big mistake. And this is all 100% the responsibility of the Prime Minister himself.
Now, if the Prime Minister seeks to dissolve Parliament and call an election, he'll have to ask Richard Wagner, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. And that's a situation that constitutional experts say is less than ideal.
Ideally, you would want to have a vice-regal representative in there to do that. You'd want to have an actual Governor-General, not the administrator doing it, simply because it keeps those functions nice and clearly delineated and separate.
As for the 57-year-old Payette, she can now expect a pension of $143,000 a year, plus more than $100,000 a year in travel and expense allowances.
I think that Canadians, rightly so, are concerned that given this report and how horrible the workers were treated, that this doesn't sit well with people.
Nice to see you again.
Even before this, polls have shown that 60% of Canadians do not believe the monarchy should have any formal role to play in Canada's system of government. And if there's no Crown connection, there's no Governor-General. The Payette controversy is bound to reignite that issue.
Well, it certainly raises questions that are controversial in the minds of Canadians about what the role of the monarchy is in Canada and what its constitutional, how our constitution works.
Trudeau can expect to be forced to defend the role of the Crown and his role in the Payette matter when Parliament returns from its winter break on Monday. David Akin, Global News, Ottawa.
The Prime Minister and U.S. President have wrapped up a call the first Joe Biden made to a foreign leader. The two spoke about the Keystone XL pipeline, the detainment of the two Canadians in China, and climate change. Trudeau says it was a good call, and that's important. As Eric Sorensen explains, this is a chance to renew the Canada-U.S. relationship after 4 tumultuous years.
In the world of Canada-U.S. diplomacy at the highest level, the tone seldom changes. But you could sense a weight has been lifted from this Prime Minister.
The fact that we have so much alignment, not just me and President Biden, but Canadians and President Biden.
Justin Trudeau and Joe Biden have common goals: to combat COVID-19, cooperate on climate change, and a personal rapport will only help.
They've talked on many occasions, they get along well, and know what to expect from each other. They're also both very committed to a return to normal.
Normal relationships was always a given. Some have been warmer, like Jean Chrétien and Bill Clinton, some cooler, Trudeau's father and Ronald Reagan. And Stephen Harper and Barack Obama were clearly not close. But mostly relations have been mutually beneficial and normal.
Well, he's two-faced.
Donald Trump changed all of that, disrespectful to Trudeau and willing to smash trade relations.
Just not having to wake up in the morning and wonder whether the President of the United States is going to throw a tantrum is itself a huge improvement.
It won't be all smooth sailing. Biden favors Buy American policies, and killing the Keystone XL pipeline was deemed even by some American politicians as a rude opening gesture.
Joe Biden comes out of this chute and pops Canada right in the face.
But it was widely understood when Biden beat Trump that Keystone was probably cooked.
The government of Canada must impose meaningful trade and economic sanctions.
Some premiers now want to play hardball with Washington, but the Prime Minister, after 4 years, is looking for common ground and common values.
To give opportunities for everyone while we build a better future. I'm very much looking forward to working with President Biden.
One issue is not the whole relationship, and there are so many areas of cooperation which Canada needs to pursue. And Biden's policy agenda aligns much more closely, not only with the Canadian governments, but with most Canadians as well.
Roland Paris says it's an encouraging sign for this country that President Biden's first call to a foreign leader was to Canada's Prime Minister. Eric Sorensen, Global News.
Canada's political and health leaders are reiterating a message: stay put and cancel any travel plans. New highly contagious variants of the virus are spreading. There are now 31 cases of the UK variant in this country and 3 of the one first found in South Africa. Prime Minister Trudeau says the government is looking at several options that will make it harder for people to return to Canada. A push to restrict interprovincial travel has hit a roadblock in one Canadian province. After mulling the possibility of banning people from entering BC, Premier John Horgan says he can't legally do it. But as Abigail Beeman reports, not everyone agrees.
And don't book a trip for spring break.
The Prime Minister already looking months ahead, and he says looking at other ways to further limit Canadians' ability to travel.
Across the country, people are being told to stay home. So if you were thinking of traveling across the country for spring break, now's not the time.
And this is the big challenge, really. These new variants.
Kelly Lee researches how travel restrictions have worked around the globe. She believes because of new, more transmissible variants, all provinces should enact restrictions for non-essential travel.
Time is of the essence.
Travel was on the agenda in a call between the premiers and Prime Minister Thursday night.
People have been talking about it for months and months, as you know, and I think it's time we put it to bed.
BC's Premier John Horgan was looking at a ban, but says after talking to lawyers, it's off the table with so much traffic due to work.
He says that we have less power to restrict economic-related travel than we do non-economic travel. And I don't agree with him.
When we think about interprovincial restrictions, we usually think about the Atlantic bubble. But constitutional lawyer Sujit Chowdhury says Newfoundland and Labrador may have the answer. The province instituted strict rules of its own, upheld by its Supreme Court.
I think the Newfoundland judgment would give provinces quite a bit of comfort that a carefully crafted set of restrictions that was rooted in science and that was backed up by the best empirical evidence, and that had a sufficiently broad set of exemptions would likely survive constitutional scrutiny.
So I think provinces would have to work a bit harder to justify a measure like this.
The Canadian Civil Liberties Association is appealing the Newfoundland and Labrador case. And important to remember, all provinces have unique challenges due to geography and size, with some borders like BC's making it more difficult to seal than the Atlantic. Abigail Beeman, Global News, Ottawa.
A COVID-19 outbreak at one of Canada Post's busiest processing plants is getting bigger. 149 employees at the Mississauga facility have now tested positive for the virus. In a statement, Canada Post says Public Health has confirmed that it is able to maintain its operations. Any employees who do test positive will leave the workplace and self-isolate. More than 4,500 people work at the site. The Biden administration enters office a year into the U.S. pandemic. The president has promised to provide 100 million COVID-19 vaccinations in his first 100 days in office. But is there enough vaccine to accomplish that? As Mike Armstrong reports, at least a dozen states are reporting shortages.
All right, how you doing?
The road to recovery is turning out to be slower than predicted. States that were ready with mass vaccination programs,
our only limitation,
just can't run them.
Our only limitation as we stand here today is supply from the federal government.
The former Trump administration pushed states to expand vaccination programs to get shots into arms. The problem has been getting the vaccines to the states. California, Ohio, and West Virginia are among states warning they're running out. Florida is rolling back who's eligible, and New York is canceling appointments for next week as it braces for new strains.
The new strains are frightening. The UK strain, Brazil strain, now the South Africa strain, and there are going to be more strains. I would wager on it.
New Jersey's governor toured a new vaccination mega site Friday, but he's had strong criticism of the Trump administration on supply for, as he says, overpromising and under-delivering. Operation Warp Speed set goals that weren't reached. 20 million people were supposed to be vaccinated by the end of December. As of Thursday, the CDC says only 15 million people have been vaccinated. Of that, less than 3 million have gotten the full 2 doses.
The first one is the economic...
Now, the Biden administration says it's still getting its sea legs and will tackle supply. But Friday, the president signed 2 executive orders aimed at economic relief for families, small businesses, and struggling communities.
Police officers, firefighters, first responders, nurses, they're all at the risk of losing their jobs.
Now, even as the country struggles to reach its goals, there are calls to move them even higher. As new strains spread, it could drive up infection rates if more of the public isn't vaccinated. Mike Armstrong, Global News, Washington.
The U.S. Senate has approved Biden's nomination for Pentagon chief. Retired Army General Lloyd Austin is the first black defense secretary in U.S. history. Biden is looking to restore stability at the Pentagon, which went through 6 people in that position, some permanent, some temporary, during the Trump administration. Sleepless in small-town Alberta. Coming up, the concerns about coal mining leaving some people anxious. The federal government is suspending the sale of all decommissioned RCMP vehicles. The announcement comes 9 months after a gunman disguised as an RCMP officer used an old police vehicle during a deadly shooting rampage in Nova Scotia. 22 people were killed in one of the worst massacres in Canadian history. Earlier this month, a 23-year-old from Nova Scotia was arrested for impersonating a police officer while driving a former police vehicle outfitted with lights and decals. Alberta needs to diversify given the cancellation of the Keystone XL pipeline, so the province is turning to new investment in metallurgic coal mining, the kind used to make steel. There are rich deposits of this coal in the southwest part of the province. An Australian mining company could get its Grassy Mountain project in the Crow's Nest Pass greenlit by the end of this year. But it's the government's move to quietly open the region to further exploration last spring that is sparking outrage. Heather Yerkes-West reports.
Conservationist Kevin Van Tegem has a little cabin in southwest Alberta. It sits near the banks of the Old Man River, an incredibly important source of water in a region that's pretty dry.
Virtually all our water comes from the headwaters, from the eastern slopes of the Rocky Mountains, the areas that trap a lot of winter snow and get a lot of spring rain.
It's why Van Tegem is so concerned about the potential resurgence of coal mining here.
We're directly impacted. It's in our grazing range.
Ranchers Laura Lang and John Smith say the issue has been keeping them up at night.
And all I can think about is, the blood, sweat, and tears that goes into these places. And to have it undone and under threat it's hard to fathom.
Across the border in BC's Elk Valley, coal mining has been a major industry for decades. But in the Crow's Nest Pass, there hasn't been an active coal operation since the 1960s. Several years ago, an Australian mining company applied to reopen the abandoned Grassy Mountain mine. The project is now before a joint review panel, but it has support from the local town council.
It's definitely would be an economic boost to our community and allow us to be sustainable moving forward in the future.
What's important to understand is this is one of the first mines of its size in Canada that's been designed from the ground up to manage issues like water quality.
Riversdale Resources says the project will use new technology to minimize the mine's impact on the environment, but the project isn't the only source of concern. In May, Alberta's government rescinded a decades-old coal policy that had banned strip mining in sensitive areas of the Rockies. Since then, dozens of leases have been handed out, and at some sites, exploration is well underway.
They've created a big disturbance there. We've got all sorts of eroding surfaces and all sorts of damage done to that mountain, and there isn't even a mining proposal yet. All they're doing is exploring it.
But in the last few weeks, the public outcry has grown. Country music singers like Paul Brandt and Corb Lund took to social media to show their concern. Several petitions have now attracted more than 100,000 signatures. And last week, a group opposed to the coal policy changes even took the province to court. A decision is expected in the next couple of months. Heather Urix-West, Global News, Calgary.
Still ahead, a review of Ontario's vaccine rollout and where it fell short. When compared to other countries around the world, Canada's COVID-19 vaccination campaign is falling behind. In December, Canada ranked 5th. That's when the rollout began. But new data shows this country has dropped to 15th. As of yesterday, Canada had vaccinated a total of more than 738,000 people. Ontario is preparing to launch up to 60 vaccination sites as part of the second phase of its campaign this spring. Retired General Rick Hillier, who leads the province's vaccine task force, told Global News that Ontario will be teaming up with pharmacies and family physicians. Tonight, Carolyn Jarvis looks at the first phase, the missteps, successes, and lessons learned.
Every time the phone rings, Kristen Hunter has a pang of anxiety that it's her father's long-term care home calling to say his health has taken a turn.
He got infected with COVID-19, unfortunately, on January the 8th. And I see it as preventable, given that that vaccine was possible to be in his arm before he got infected.
While Ontario has prioritized COVID-19 vaccines for long-term care residents and employees, alongside healthcare workers and First Nation communities, it has fallen behind other provinces in reaching those seniors quickly.
And we only have 626 homes. We have 72,000 people. We know where they are, and we've had enough vaccine to vaccinate all of them from December 21st.
One of Ontario's most critical early decisions was to place its vaccination hubs in 19 hospitals. But with instructions from Pfizer at the outset not to move the vaccine, most long-term care residents couldn't reach it.
There was credible concern about moving the vaccine, that if you move it around and actually if you defrosted it and agitated it and shook it up, it would denature it.
Quebec, by contrast, elected to put half its vaccination centres right inside long-term care homes. And by mid-January, with fewer vaccines supplied, it had given first shots to more long-term care residents than Ontario. Once Pfizer provided new distribution guidelines for its vaccine on December 18th, British Columbia started moving the vaccine into long-term care homes days later. But Ontario didn't do so until January 5th.
So, yeah, there's clear bumps on the road. There were clear hurdles and some missteps.
By then, Ontario's new approach was called speed over perfection. Empty the freezers and get shots into arms. But speed meant some back office staff in hospitals were offered the shot before frontline workers.
So speed over precision is not what we were hoping to see, and it's certainly not fair.
In its latest pivot, Ontario is saying long-term care homes will be its near sole focus. Only for some, it comes too late. Carolyn Jarvis, Global News, Toronto.
And to learn more about Ontario's vaccine rollout, its successes and missteps to date, watch The New Reality tomorrow night at 7 with Donna Friesen right here on Global. Up next, remembering the achievements of hammering Hank Aaron on and off the field. The world of baseball is looking back at the life of a true champion tonight. Hank Aaron, a Hall of Famer, chased down and broke Babe Ruth's home run record. But it's not just how he played the game, it's how Aaron stood up to racism. As Mike DeLay reports, he was a humble hero who fought to change America.
Strike, Aaron waiting, the outfield deep and straight away.
fastball is a high drive.
Even after his greatest professional moment, Hank Aaron had every reason in the world to be angry. He'd just broken one of baseball's hallowed records held by an icon in Babe Ruth. Yet for many, race is what still defined him.
A black man is getting a standing ovation in the Deep South for breaking a record of an all-time baseball idol.
In the weeks leading up to that moment, he was getting 3,000 letters a day, much of it full of unvarnished hate. He read them all. 40 years later, when he said he didn't think America had changed, he read all the new ones that came in too. Henry Aaron grew up in Mobile, Alabama. When he was a boy, the Ku Klux Klan came to his family home. His mother told him to hide under the bed. He looked at baseball as his way out, and while he became a star, he never achieved the same fame or enjoyed the same rewards as white stars like Joe DiMaggio or Mickey Mantle. But his impact was profound.
It made him mentally tough. It gave him an understanding that he wasn't just playing for Henry Aaron. He was literally carrying an entire race of people on his shoulders.
Body break star Hal Johnson says he didn't believe his father when he said he played with Aaron in the Negro Leagues. At a game in Montreal, Johnson's father said he was going to say hi. Hal, a bit shy back then, refused to go.
Hank came out of the dugout, looked at my dad, and opened his arms. My dad goes on the field with my sister, and big hug. And by the time I got down, he was off the field.
Aaron was his idol, as he was for so many others, including Canadian Hall of Famer Ferguson Jenkins and musician Lenny Kravitz, who proudly wore a Hank Aaron t-shirt as a kid.
Hank Aaron, he was just a great man, regardless of his color. And he wasn't a great black man. He was just a great man for what he did.
Hammerin' Hank Aaron was 86.
What a nice story. And that is Global National for this Friday. I'm Robin Gill. Tonight, your Canada is a herd of deer taking a stroll through Prince George, BC. We would love to see your corner of the country, so please keep sending your photos to viewers@globalnational.com. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you back here tomorrow. Have a great night.